not sure if we have everyone, but I'll start the recording and I will share my screen. So I'm not sure if we want to start now or whether we should wait for some more people or what.
If you're recording,
Yep.
I think it's okay to start because
Okay.
we could always hand it out. Thank you.
Yep. The first thing I just go briefly touch over is the shadow agent. So that's this one here. So Shannon probably would have sent you a web link to access the shadow agent. When you first log in, you log in with that one with your RingCentral account. So you just sign in, basically it'll ask you for your RingCentral account. To sign in, obviously there, it'll get you to the spot where you can go in and eventually, once you do go through all those hoops, you'll get to like the RingCentral phone, so embedded phone, so you can use that as the phone there. In the upper left-hand corner as a little picture, it'll possibly have yourself there. That's where you can go in and change your own status, as well as basically anybody that's logged in can change their own status there. So we can change this is my information. I don't have access to yours necessarily, but yours will have, like under the do not disturb, we'll have all those reason codes there for it. So when you go and do not disturb, basically that's where all the codes will be. It's also where you can go and change, I can log myself out of the queue or log myself into the queue. It's where you can do that. Now, what the admins will have access to is under this little icon up here, the little laptop icon. Everyone will technically have access to this. And this is where you can see, who's in Do Not Disturb, who's not in Do Not Disturb for the queues and things like that, or just extensions in general. But what the admins will have access to is if they're an admin within the software here, is I don't have access to it, but let's say I was an admin. If I clicked on Callum's name here, so you can see Callum's right now available. If I were to click on his name, it'll take me to this sort of screen off to the side here, and it'll be, instead of my name, it'll say Callum there. And then I can change his status from, being available. Let's say Callum went home sick. I can change him then to being like do not disturb and, do not disturb sick, or, went home early or whatever, it may be. So I can change his status from within this shadow A1 here. So that's what the admins have access to, which a general user would not have access to it. So a general user, like you see with me, they still have access to this icon here, but they can't click on a user to actually go in and change their actual status there for it. Okay, so that's really the only admin feature that for the software that the admins have that the general user does not for it, is that they can go and click on an actual individual there to actually change their status there for it. Now the other program, the Shadow A1, when you log into here, so right now I've logged in with the admin account. The admins will have access, and this is where you can actually specify what the actual admins have access to. So under the user account management over here, this is where you can go in and actually create the actual user account. So right now you can see, the admin account, which is what I'm logged in as. You can change the password if you wanted to. And right now it's a super admin, so it's got full rights to everything. You can see Jay right there. Basically, they're not necessarily super admin, but they have some admin rights there. So we can go and check or uncheck different things to it. I'm just going to create a new user temporarily here. And then in here, so right now, this user account, really all it can do is run a report. It can't do any other sort of thing. It doesn't have access to the dashboard. It can't change personnel information, can't change widgets or anything like that. All it can do, it can't get into the user account management. All it can do is run a report. Now it can run a report on everyone. If you wanted that particular user, let's say it's a sales manager or something, to only be able to run reports on the sales extensions, then over where it says called data filter, over here is where we can go in and basically add a filter to this actual account. So then we can say, okay, this particular user, whenever they go to run a report, attach this filter to it so that it selects the certain extensions that they have access to. So they couldn't try to get, the presidents or anything like that, recordings or information or on any of their calls there for it. To make a filter to add to this list, you just have to click on a little pencil and paper there. And then this will bring up basically a filter screen. So it's where we can go in, and this will be very similar to when we get to the reporting, basically how to run a report by applying a filter to it. So under the apply filter, if there's a filter or filters there, it'll say under the all calls there. By clicking on new here, this thing gives us, again, I'll just call this sales, an ability to add a name to it, and then you'll see the name now is under the apply filter. And then under the add option is then where we can start picking and choosing things. A lot of this stuff won't affect this particular filter or generally won't use, but like I said, these are also used in the actual reports themselves. So you can look for a specific phone number, or if you just wanted them to have outbound or incoming calls, you can just specify that. Typically, what most customers will use is like either the extension, surname, or department or site for it. So in this instance, let's say it's the department. We can then pick a department here and then basically select whichever departments we wanted. So if there was a sales in here, which I have no idea if there it is, but
Hey, Michael.
Yep.
We got some people waiting to get into the meeting.
Oh,
Can
sorry.
somebody admit them?
Sorry, I have that off to the another screen off to the side there for it. So you can always hit department and click sales there for it, or whatever it is you're looking for. So if there was a sales, it would find it anywhere within that. So we can just say like public safety, we'll just pick there. And now I can actually rename this from sales to public safety. And now if we go back to the actual user account, I'll apply that filter to that user. Now that user can only ever run a report on the extensions that belong to the department that's public safety there for it. So they couldn't try to see any, it won't allow them to see any extension beyond that particular department there. The report accessibility over here, this is where we can say which reports they have access to. So if they don't have access to the call center, or you don't want them seeing any of the codes from the shadow agent, then we can turn off those reports there from it, and then they won't have access to those reports there for it. So they would just have access to the generic calls reports, or if you want them only to have access to the call center reports and nothing else, then you can do that as well. So you can limit which report layouts they have access to, in addition to the excuse me, in addition to the actual filter there to specify what data they can see. Admin privileges over here. This is where if we go in and select them to say as user, then we can give them some admin rights. So we can pick and choose which admin rights we want to give them. So a lot of times, some people may want them to be almost full admin, but not have access to the user account management. So we would just uncheck that. What I see generally more often than not is they uncheck everything except for the report and task scheduler. And then that allows this particular user then to schedule up reports automatically without, getting an admin involved into it. So they can schedule up their own reports for it. So you can pick and choose whichever admin features you want to give them for it. So that's is admin, and it unlocks the hammer and the wrench there. What device control this little checkbox gives them is in our dashboard, which I haven't showed you here. If I actually go and say dashboard for that one there and close out and go back into it. Oh, maybe I have to, oh yeah. So in here, you can also go in, so I can go into here and switch, say Jessica there. I can just click on that, and then that should allow me to actually turn on or off, basically allow her to be accepting queue calls or putting her in do not disturb, or, whatever you want to. So you can actually adjust the actual controls from within the dashboard itself for the actual users themselves there for it. So the manager could do it in Shadow Agent, or they could do it through the actual dashboard. And you have that feature. So if you don't want them to have access to it, then you can turn off the device control. And they can still have the dashboard and see what the agents are, but they don't have the ability to actually turn on or off the actual user status there for it. The quick view, so this box right here, this gives them these two icons here. The first one is just really our database. So this is if you want to quickly find something without having to run a report. Basically, it'll give you options here to, hit the search button, and then let's say a 911 call, you can do 911, and then we'll find anywhere, that 911 appears in the actual phone number. You can put in also, extension number. So if we just said 25, it'll find anywhere where there's 25 in. So you can fill as many of those boxes, as you need to in order to try to track down that information. And it's a little bit quicker, just a quick way to view some information in here. You can't export it out or save it as a document or anything like that from this. It's just a quick way to view it. Couple of things to make note: the duration in here, so that's all in seconds. Call type, anytime it's an ET, that means it's an outbound call. TE means an incoming call, and then an EO and an EI would be basically the two legs of an internal call. The EO is the originator, so in this instance 4257. Basically, they called out to extension 4911 there for it. And then for extension 4911 would have like an EI leg for them from 4257 there for it. So it's just somewhat a quick way to look up the actual data without actually going through a report there. The other icon it gives you is for the quick view is this one here, which is a little bit easier to read and understand, and that will tell you, like the first column will tell you whether it's an incoming or an outgoing call or an internal, and then the extensions would be all the extensions that are part of the actual call, and then you have the actual phone number, and then the start time and the duration in there as well. And basically every time a call gets transferred from one leg to another, you can see all that throughout the call there for it. So where's the call that we have? See a bunch of internal calls. Just can't seem to find an incoming call. Let's do this. So you can click on filter up here, and then you can filter on, whatever date parameter you're looking for. If you just want incoming or outgoing calls, a specific extension or a phone number you can put in. And again, these are all contained sort of search boxes there. And the display options there will allow you to pick either the oldest call or the newest call first, and then you can say, 100, 500 calls, whatever the amount is that you want to see in the report or in this display option here. And then it should give you basically all the actual information that's there for it. And you should see everything that's part of the actual call as well. So we can expand this internal one there, and you can see all the different legs that are there. You can see where it rang a particular extension and which extension it rang, and then basically who did it try to get for it. So you can see all the individual parts. What time did it start ringing or calling that extension? How long was the call there for the duration of it? So again, you can't export from here. It's just a quick way to actually view the actual calls that are there. So that's the quick view there. The next one there's a wallboard user. I'm going to skip over that for 1 second because I'm first going to go over to a dashboard user. So a dashboard user gives you this icon here, so that gives that account the dashboard. So the dashboard is basically where you can have it set so you can see sort of stuff happening in real time. So that's where you can have certain widgets like we see here, where we can see for the help desk how many calls have been happening throughout the day. And all these widgets will update in real time. So if there is a call currently waiting in the queue, we'll tell you, the number of calls that are waiting, whatever's the longest wait time, all that information there. And like the stats for the day, like the number that have been answered, basically that'll increase throughout the day without having to worry about, refreshing the web page or anything like that. The calls will just constantly refresh that number there for you there, as well as you can see obviously what the agents are doing. So it's what you can see sort of what's happening on the actual system as a whole there for it. So that's what the dashboard is. What a wallboard account is pretty much the same as the dashboard, but all it can do is have an actual dashboard, and that's it. It doesn't have access to reporting or any quick views or any of that stuff there. It just is a wallboard user, and that's it. So it will look like something similar to this view here. So it will just be basically the web page will be its own wallboard there. So basically that's what that will have there, is just the wallboard and no other reporting functionality or, like I said, the quick view or anything like that. So that's the wallboard user and a dashboard user. Dashboard admin, this is where we can go under the widget management option over here. They'll have access to that, and this is where we can actually make those actual widgets. So the widgets are the little windows that you see here. So it's where we can go in and create them for specific queues or specific groups. So by going under the widget management here, so these are currently all the widgets that we can give to an individual user or multiple users. Just by clicking on it, we can then go and modify, a data filter or trigger, and then we can also go and add it to an actual user. So like for this one here, we can click on, the user there, and now that user kind of has access to that widget. So these aren't all the possible widgets. These are just the ones that are currently available to individual users. You can create new ones just by clicking on the add button down here. Excuse me. And then underneath here, we can go under here and say, what kind of widget we want to see, because this drop down will have a whole lot of widgets here. So this is where we can go and select the individual widgets, but you can subsort them down or filter it down. So we can just say real-time calls, and then we can say, whether we want it based off the queue or the extension. So we can say queue, and then you have your different widgets that are all real-time calls for the queue. So we can have like the real-time calls waiting for counter. So this one, and then we can filter on just the help desk, so it won't show anybody else. Just give it a name there, and then we just hit save and close. And now the middle section is now where we can go and start adding some things. So like under data filters here, we can then click hit add there. And now, because right now this widget would just show all the calls waiting in any queue. This is where we can specify, okay, a specific queue that we want. So we can go in here, scroll through here to find our help desk, which is it the daily help desk? Oh no, there's that one there. So we can just select that, or you can select multiple queues if you wanted to, and then it would count the total number of calls waiting in all those queues there. Now, some widgets will have what's called a trigger. A trigger is where we can send in an alert if something happens in that widget. So in this instance, this one's going to show you the total number of calls that are currently waiting. So we can say add alert in here. And then under our condition, under our alert condition, we can say the number of calls waiting. So under the field, we'll have whatever conditions that widget has available. So this one only has the number of calls that are currently waiting in that queue. And then we can say, once it gets over 2 calls waiting in the queue, basically send an alert. Where it alerts the dashboard, what that'll do is, for back to here, let's say it's this widget will turn red, and then they give it like a red border around it, just to make it stand out, and the number where it's the 0 and it's in blue, it'll change that blue font to a red font therefore, just to make it stand out on the actual dashboard itself. So that'd be, in this instance, once there's 3 calls waiting in the queue. The other thing it can do is so we can send out a notification in here. So that's where we can send out like an email to somebody. Oops, I've got a highlight on that. So we can say add a notification. We can email somebody, some sort of event there. We can also send out like a RingCentral GLIP, or an SMS message or a voice call as well if we wanted to. So we can send out different things, and we can, like I said, we can have them emailed to somebody to let them be aware that there's 3 calls waiting in the queue or more than 3 calls waiting in the queue. And then once you have that set, basically now your widget's set. So then it's just a matter of going in and assigning it to the actual user itself. So we can go in here and assign it to the admin, a user account, whatever one we want to have access to it. So right now those 2 have access to it and the other 2 do not. So if they were to try to open up a dashboard, they would not have access to that widget, so they wouldn't be able to see the total number of queues that are calls currently waiting in that particular queue. What you can also do in here is if we clicked on like the user here, just to make life a little bit easier. So this is again going to show all the widgets, and then you can see all the ones that are checked are the ones that are assigned to it. Instead of finding them all on the left-hand side, we can just go into here now, and if we wanted to, we can say, help. Then we'll bring up all the help desk ones there, and then we can just check all those ones there right away. And then basically now all those widgets are assigned to that user. So that user has access just to the help desk widgets, and that's it. So that's under the widget management option here, where we can create the actual widgets and assign them to the user. So that is under the dashboard admin. Whoever has access to that can create those widgets there for it. And then back to this, basically the is admin gives you the ability to see admin features. And then is super admin basically just checks all the boxes for you. So so that you're pretty much the full of rights to everything there for it. So that's sort of the user account management screen there. So you can have at most is 10 accounts, I do believe, is 20 accounts there for it looks like it for you guys. So you can have up to 20 different users. The admin would be one, and technically right now the user will be one, but you can obviously delete the user. As well as what that 20 also controls is the number of connections to the actual software. And each time somebody logs in, that uses up one of the connections, but people can use multiple accounts or can log in with the same account multiple times. So somebody can log in with the admin as well while I'm in it, but each time you do that, it still will use up one of the concurrent licenses there for it. For that. So that's sort of creating the accounts and giving them certain permissions there for it. Also under here, under the wrench, the entity and location management, this is where you can go in and swap out, basically, here's the company information, so you can just, that appears in the upper right, so you can change that out if I have any of that wrong. The main thing is, basically, this is where you can swap out our logo for your own logo, and this appears in the upper left of the reports for that.
Hey, Prax, will you mute your mic, please?
Another thing within the software here is under the personnel management here. You don't have to worry about too much about this, but this is where we'll always get this information from the phone system every night. So if you do update somebody's, like somebody leaves and somebody new comes in, their name should automatically get changed into here. A couple of things to be aware of in here. For anything that's a queue, it's mostly all queue related here, is you can go under the department and fill in a department, and it won't get overwritten just due to the fact that departments typically, or queues don't typically have a department, so you can add in an actual department for it, just so you can make it for the filters easier to run to grab all the extensions that belong to that department. You can grab all the agents and the queues all at the same time, especially for a filter for like a user that you want to apply to a user there. We also have these two columns here, the SLA max threshold and min threshold. This is for some companies have a service level agreement, and then we have these service level reports. So what they do is tell you they have it where, let's say they need to have 80% of the calls answered or serviced within the first 2 minutes. That max threshold is where we put the wait time. There's the 120 seconds there. So anything that's answered by an agent after the 120 seconds call goes by or has a wait time longer than 120 seconds will not be considered as a service call in the SLA reports there for it. The minimum threshold is sort of the reverse in that it won't count any sort of abandoned call as an abandoned call if it doesn't pass that minimum threshold. So let's say they have it set so the minimum threshold that the call has to wait in the queue is 13 or 15 seconds. Anybody that calls in and abandons within that first 15 seconds won't be considered a call into the actual queue itself for it, and it won't be considered an abandoned call. If they're answered by an agent within that 15 seconds, we'll still consider that as an actual call in the actual queue and answered, but it's only just for the abandoned calls there for it. So that's under the personnel table there. The other thing in here is we do have the report and task scheduler. So this is where we can automate reports to run. But if you want them emailed out, we have a general system settings here. So this is where we need to know for basically the email address, or not the email address, but the email server to allow us to, to use to actually send out the actual emails. And then under the actual report and task scheduler, which is this, or this icon up at the top there, basically that gives us the ability to automate the report. So at the top here, we would just tell it, say, new task, and then we just tell the frequency, how often we want it to run, every day, every week, every month. And then we give it a name. So, we'll say this is weekly reports. And then we can go under start time, tell the time, obviously, and then what day of the week we want it to run. And then once we have that set, we can go down to under new action down here and say report. And then these would be all of our reports that this account has access to. And then we can go in and,
Randy, can you mute yourself or somebody?
Robin.
I can hear a lot of background. Thank you.
So we can then go and select any of the actual queue reports that we have. So let's say it's our queue summary. You pick a filter that that user has access to. So we'll just say yesterday. Your export type, be a PDF, like an Excel document, comma separated file if you wanted to, whatever works best for you. And then the export option will either go to email, and then you just have to fill in the email address there, or NSFTP server if you wanted it to go to that, or what's called public reports. Where that goes is that goes under, if we go under the reports, there will be this option up here that says public repository. Every user account has access to this. So if you do send a report to there, just be aware everybody would be able to see and view that report and download it if you want to, or delete it as well from it. So yeah, it's just a matter of then picking your options for the email. If you select multiple email addresses, you just have to put a comma or a semicolon. Either option would work between the email addresses there. And then you just hit save, and then under new action report, basically you can go back and add another report. So let's say we want all the abandoned calls, we can do the same thing, and then every week we'll run through those two reports, and then email them out to the various people that have to get those reports there for it. That right now is sort of all the admin sort of features there. The next step would be to go through the reports as well as creating an actual dashboard itself. Before we do that, is there any questions on anything or concerns at all on any of the stuff I've shown you so far?
I have a few questions, yes.
Yep.
So with the minimum 30-second threshold where it shows so it doesn't show them as abandoned, is there still a way to see the calls that are abandoned before the threshold in a report?
Correct, yeah. So let's say we added those into those for the SLAs. If we go into the SLA report itself, so what that'll do, and we'll try this one and see what this one gives us. But right now we don't have any SLAs in here. But so here we have the help desk. So the totals here, so these will always be the total calls. So where it says the abandoned 18, those are 18 calls actually hung up within the actual queue. But under the SLA section of this here, where it says abandoned here, these would be the number of calls that abandoned after that minimum threshold. So let's say it's 15, so it would be the number of calls that actually abandoned after that 15 seconds for that there. And then the calls here would also adjust to that value there, and that would also exclude those calls that abandoned within those first 15 seconds from that. Just like the service calls under the totals here, so these are the number of calls that actually the agents actually did handle. The one under the SLA where it says service, these are only the ones that were serviced within that max threshold. So let's say again our example of 120 seconds. So it's the people that had a wait time of less than 120 seconds that went to that an actual agent handled it. So you'll still see the true serviced and true abandoned calls, but you also have with it adjusted to those min and max thresholds there for it.
There's a way to put that threshold on the queue, not per person, right?
Correct. It's only on the actual queue itself. The min and max threshold will never work on an extension or an agent. It's only referencing the queue. And each queue can have their own separate one there. So the easiest way to do that is if we go into the personnel here, and then if we hit search, and then under device type, if you just type queue, this then will bring up all the queues there for it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And then, like I said, each queue can have their own separate min and max threshold there. If you don't want a max threshold, and you do put in a minimum threshold, you still have to put something in there. So just put like 6 nines or something like that in there, because otherwise it's going to treat that as a 0 or a null for the minimum threshold for it.
Okay. I have a couple questions more when we get to the reports.
Okay.
But for in the admin and users, so you're in the admin and I'm in the admin right now, but will users see different? Will it be per person? So what am I trying to say? So the admin obviously sees everything like what we're looking at right now, but if I was to log in as myself, I could build my own dashboards so I wouldn't see the admin stuff, right?
Correct. Yeah. So if So this dashboard right here, every account has their own separate dashboard. So what we're seeing right now is only under the admin account. And if we go under and expand it or unlock the widgets here that you see here, these are only the ones that currently this user account has access to. Like if I were to log out and log back in as that user account that I created,
Admitted you to the meeting.
you'll notice that when I click on the dashboard here, it's going to be a completely blank dashboard. It doesn't have access to that. So what you saw in the previous one was just under the admin there. And then the widgets, you'll also notice there's a lot less widgets that's there. So you can see these ones here are only the 4 for the help desk. You know, we don't have we got a call history one here for, that was when I selected it, but there's a lot less widgets because these are only the widgets that this quote unquote user account has currently access to that we gave under the widget management for it.
Okay. And then how can we tell what place we are in the queue? Or what place a caller or a technician's in the queue? Is there a way to do that through this one?
Unfortunately, there's not. I believe what you're asking is just to see if it's ringing somebody, who's the next person's going to ring. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't get that information from the phone system. I've never known that to come to us there for it.
Okay. And then are we going to be using the shadow agent as our main, so not logging into the RingCentral app, but just the shadow agent app?
I know most people do both because you can't really send messages or group chats or glip messages through the shadow agent.
Okay. I think that's all my questions for that part.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Hey, Michael, is the RingCentral system tied to this? It must be. So if I change the name in the RingCentral system, would it change it here?
Eventually, yes, it will. So if you change it right now, it won't change it right now. Basically, it'll pull this information down, I want to say at midnight, for lack of a better. So it'll do it over midnight-ish kind of deal. So yeah, if somebody leaves, and then a new extension gets added to the phone system there, we will pull that information down at midnight with whatever correlates to their extension number. And then so if we go in here and change this person's name or the admin mailbox, let's say, excuse me, within our software here at midnight, it will pretty much overwrite it back and say admin for it, because it does go over and grab any new changes, or basically grabs the information that's there and basically overwrites what's in here for it. The only caveats is for the departments for a queue, just due to the fact that the queues don't have a department, as well as the min and max threshold, as that's not information we currently can get from the for the SLAs from the actual phone system itself. The other, whoops, sorry.
I was going to say I have 2 more questions, but go ahead.
Okay, one other thing is, so if we go back to our dashboard here, basically you'll see the help desk. So and then basically the agents that are part of the help desk. So again, if you add somebody new to the help desk right now, so now there's like a 9th agent, basically it's not going to update that until basically midnight as well, because that's when it queries to find out, who's all a member of that actual queue itself. Like we'll still see the queue passing the call to that particular extension. It's just you won't see them as part of the actual queue that's in here for it until the next day that's there for it. All right, so Gus, you had a question?
Yeah, so we were messing around with this dashboard that we're looking at right now the other day, or yesterday or something, and we went to put people to not accept queue calls, and it didn't trigger it through the RingCentral app. So it's supposed to work together. It's like a delay, like it was we waited a few, like a minute or so, and nothing ever changed through the RingCentral app when we did the little, like next to the person's icon up there, that little drop down.
It should. So in either case, like yeah, if you do it in here, we find somebody, you click on them, it should. If you say do not disturb or accept or turn off the queue calls, it should. Like mine, if I go into here and change my status from, like right now I'm in busy because I'm in the meeting here, but if I go and change it, like I'll show you my MVP program, you can see that that right now, basically you can see that I'm busy right now. It's just a little red circle there. If I switch it to do not disturb within the shadow A one there, so if I just switch it over to that, then eventually you'll see this and give it a moment there, and it's now switched over to do not disturb without me actually doing anything for it. Or I can go back over here and say, take myself out of do not disturb and put myself back to available. And then it basically will do the same thing. I'll take myself out of do not disturb and shadow agent and put myself back into available for it. So,
Okay, and then my other last question was, how do we get admin access to the shadow agent? Because we have access to the agent, but we don't necessarily have the admin access yet.
we need to know the people that you want to be admins within the shadow agent for it. So you just have to email me the list of names or email addresses, and then unfortunately we have to, right now, the way it's currently stated is we have to do that for you.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Just like currently right now, if you want to add sort of new new do not disturb statuses there. So let's say, a week from now you guys thought of a new one. It can obviously get added to it. It's just, you just have to send it to us and then we can update that and add in the new status for it. For that. Excuse me. Any other questions on the admin side of things?
I have a quick question.
Yep.
From this admin view, how can you go in and set up like calling trees or messages, or is that where we do that? Is from here?
Unfortunately, it is not. We don't have any control of that. We just give you the ability to report and change people's statuses. That would be done within the actual RingCentral system itself.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so anything like as you said, changing the calling tree or setting up, I know some customers have it set where there's sort of like a delay after they get off a call from the queue so that the queue doesn't send them immediately the next call. There is that is an option within the actual RingCentral. We don't have access to change that, but so like immediately you get off a call from the queue, it gives you some time you can set up a time like 30 seconds or whatever, so you can add in notes or something like that. So you're not getting a call right away from the actual queue. That's done within, so things like that is all done within the actual RingCentral itself phone system.
With Jessica being blue right there, does that mean she's on a call?
Correct, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why she's on an internal and outgoing call to the same number, 4288, which would be an extension. That makes sense, but
she's highly skilled.
yeah, so what you see here, so obviously, Tim's in do not disturb and he's in a meeting. The one-on-one there is he's logged in, he's a member of one queue, which is the bottom one, and then the first one is the number of queues that person's currently logged into. So you can see Gus, yourself up there. Basically, you're logged out of the one queue that you are actually in there for it. For that. And then Megan's logged in, and basically with it being green, that's more or less means available to actually take an actual call there for it. So like Tim being in do not disturb, the phone system won't try to pass a call to them. And you can see right now there's 2 calls currently waiting in the actual queue, with the longest one being 17 seconds there for it. And you can see it just started ringing Megan, and Megan now picked up the actual call. That first one there went.
Ooh, real-time testing.
Yeah, so that's what the dashboard can give you is all that information there. Like the shadow agent can still show you, that Megan's on a call, as well as there is an option, and this is again what we would probably go under the actual users when we're all set for that is we can go and see the actual queues themselves to see something similar as a similar look to it that it'll show you, the number of calls that are currently waiting as well as, how many people are logged in the queue, how many are available, unavailable, and so forth there for it. Any other admin questions? And obviously I know this is all new and we can always get together, after, a week or two after you've had a chance to look at it to go over some of that stuff again as well. Yeah, we can do that as well. That's not an issue as well for the admin side of things, or even just the regular reporting side, but. All right. Then do we have everybody for our do we need to wait for anybody for the, I guess, user training or manager training?
They should be here by now, and if not, we'll just forward a recording.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to go back to the shadow agent. So again, when you first log in, you'll be at the phone set here. And then you can use this as your embedded phone. It's the same as the RingCentral phone, so you can listen to voicemail, make calls through it as well. If you click on the little picture icon in the upper left-hand corner, right now it'll show your status, but this is also where you can go and change your status. So I can put myself in available, although it will jump me back because I'm in a meeting, it will jump me back to that. Or I can switch myself from do not disturb to put myself, on lunch or, in training there, and it'll put myself in do not disturb. Excuse me. And that will filter through it, all the RingCentral, or it should filter through all the RingCentral apps. So, if you have somebody in the MVP program, it should put them in do not disturb in that, or on the phone, the little phone app, it'll put you in do not disturb in the phone app as well. So it just gets filtered across the entire RingCentral system. The in training part, so what you'll end up seeing, so if I go click on this icon over here, so you can see there's me. You'll see that I have the little circle with the dash in it to say I'm in do not disturb, but it also then lets you know sort of I'm not just in do not disturb, I'm in training. So it gives you the do not disturb status there for it. So it'll show in the shadow agent as well if we have the dashboard. So you'll see, like Tim here in do not disturb. It looks like he also probably put in, in a meeting for his sort of sub status or the auxiliary code just to say, what kind of, do not disturb. And it looks like, they put themselves in do not disturb with customer walking in or a walk in there for it. So you can actually see sort of the sub status within it as well as the actual do not disturb state that they're in there for it. So yeah, so you can change your statuses around. Again, if you need additional statuses there, just let us know. We can add those to that list. We do have some special ones there, which I'm not sure if that ever got brought up, but we have like a wrap up time. So this is where we can say put in a wrap up, and then basically it'll then start counting down 2 minutes. Then once it's out of that, it'll take me out of do not disturb and put me into available there for it. Also within our statuses there, I can go down to where it says accept queue calls and I can change my actual status. I can't be in do not disturb to do that, but if I'm in busy right now, I can go and take myself or log myself out of the actual queue itself if I wanted to. And I can log myself in and out of queues as well, individual queues for that. As well, I can go and change sort of like a little message there at the top. So I can say, like, if I'm going to be out of the office for a while, I can just say I'm out of the office or I'm on vacation there for it. So we'll have that little note there for it. So that's where you can go and change your actual status within the actual RingCentral phone system, and you have all the additional sub statuses there as well for that.
Hey, Brandy has a question.
Yeah.
If you change the statuses in RingCentral, will they change the status in Teams? And vice versa?
Don't believe so. I've never I never have come across that situation yet as to whether I don't know if it will or not. I'm assuming it probably will not.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
So when you're putting in the statuses and stuff, is that only referring to people who are actually being able to accept calls in the queue? Because when I look at mine, it says I'm in a meeting, but it does not allow me to change it other than to go available or invisible. So I'm just curious if if the statuses are only for people that are actually actively taking call
No,
queues.
it should be. So available, busy, and do not disturb should be available to everyone, whether they're an agent, member of a queue, and logged into the queue or not.
Mhm.
So you may see this, and then you may have to. I'm assuming that you've already tried this just to expand it. Do you have the do not disturb?
Yeah, and all it does is it says do not disturb.
Okay, there's no drop down listing for you
Nope,
then.
on
Okay.
none of those. So
All right.
that's why
Tammy,
I
are
was
you in
wondering.
the shadow agent?
Hmm?
Are you in the shadow agent or just in the RingCentral?
I'm
stage?
just in the RingCentral.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes. The statuses, unfortunately, we don't have the ability to actually give the statuses to the actual RingCentral apps. We don't have that ability. You have to do sort of these statuses here can only be changed within the actual shadow agent itself.
Okay, so then they don't affect the RingCentral? Is that
Yes and no. It's if you change, so if I go in here and change myself and put myself into do not disturb and say I'm on break here, it will change it and reflect that in all of the RingCentral apps that I've gone and do not disturb it. You won't see the on break, or you won't have the option on break or on lunch across the other apps, but it will still put you in do not disturb in those other apps.
okay? Because I'm just wondering because I saw like Jessica's status, it allowed her to say customer walk in. And I'm just wondering how she was able to change that.
I'm assuming
Well,
right now.
you're looking. No, you're looking at the shadow agent and the shadow A1. So she changed it in the shadow agent probably to the customer walk-in, and that's why I changed that there.
Yeah, she would have had to have done it within the shadow this program here. I'm assuming she has access or has already accessed the shadow agent program, so she's probably gone under do not disturb and selected that option there, because that would
I
not be an
see.
option within the RingCentral MVP app or the RingCentral phone for it.
Okay, sorry, it was a little confusing there.
That's okay. Yeah, so again, if we click on the little laptop here, this will show basically, if I go back to the users, it'll bring up all the different users. And then you have this arrow in the upper right here. This allows you to, under the users, basically pick and choose all the users. So I can hit select all, or by default, it will probably be selected all. So then you can go in here, and deselect people you don't want to see, or select none, and then select the individuals, or you can go in and ask for a particular department. So we can say support, and we'll just bring up the support or a particular queue if you wanted to as well. And then from here, you can always uncheck the available people, and we'll get rid of those if you don't want to see those and you just want to see who's in do not disturb or invisible there for you. Just so you know, if the icon looks like that, where it's not a solid person, that means that person's logged out of a couple of queues. So you can see that I've logged out of the support and the mic queue. And then Callum's a member of so he's a member of the support group, but he's not logged into it, versus Russell there is a member of the support group, but because it's solid, it means that he's actually logged into the actual queue itself, therefore it. And then the queues, you can click on the queues over here. And then basically this icon up at the top in the upper right of the actual boxes there, that allows you to bring up the members if you wanted to. So if I wanted to see all the support people there, it'll bring up all the different people that are part of the actual support group there for it. So instead of selecting everybody, I can just select the queues and then go under the queues to actually, again, view sort of historically what's happened in the day so far, as well as if there's any calls currently there, as well as bringing up the individuals there for it as well. you may not have this icon up here. It looks like 3 dots and 3 dashes. This is where, and it's an option that you can use in the future. Right now, we don't have any what's called a disposition code, so I can go in here and add in sort of state what the call was about, so that we can then run a report on those codes after the fact. So while I'm on a call, or excuse me, or after the fact, this will just show me all the calls for currently for today. I can go in here and just start saying, you know, was an automated answer call, or, you know, why did I talk to Nick there, or whatever, you know, it was a billing question. So we can put whatever codes we need to on the actual calls after the fact, so then you can then find out, you know, why did that person call into the queue, or, you know, why did, you know, was the call resolved or not, or is it an ongoing issue? You know, whatever code you may want to put in there for it. You can do that on for all the calls sort of after the fact there for it. So some customers use it, a lot of customers don't, but it is an option there for you. And then you have the little phone icon. So this will be basically an embedded phone again, so you can use that as your phone. This icon you probably won't have. That's where I can go in and state who's an admin, who's not an admin, as well as update those presences or those additional do not disturbs if you have those, where we can do that. And then the little gear icon here, this allows us to, for like the display settings, I can turn on or off a leaderboard if I wanted to. I can turn on or off, you know, the dark mode for it. As well as for the call handling, I can say, you know, if I do get a call, basically pop it over to the tab that has the, basically this tab here that will have all the presences there for it, for that. So that's sort of a little bit about using the actual shadow agent. Again, this is where you'd go in to actually change sort of you get those enhanced do not disturb statuses, so you can change those around from not just do not disturb, but, you know, do not disturb in an actual sub reason for it.
Hey, Michael, real quick, when we click that second icon, the presence one that you were talking about,
Yep.
ours is just blank right now.
Yeah,
Is that
that's probably
we're
because
not-
you don't have any presences.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, truthfully, I'm surprised that you even have the icon. I would have thought, I was about to say that icon will probably be missing, but if you do have it, then if there's no disposition codes or accounts, then yeah, you won't see any of this options that are here for it. So if you do want to use those again, you'll just have to let me know what you want those codes to be and the statuses that correlates those codes, and then you'll get, like you see here, you'll get a little drop down, and it'll show, if you have like 30 codes, it's only going to show you 15, but you can type anything you need in here. So, you know, if I do a C, then it'll bring up everything that's got a C anywhere in there. So if I say CL, then it'll just bring it everything that's got a CA together for that there for it. And then, yeah, you know, we can say they called again for that. But yeah, that's sort of the shadow agent, and, you know, what the individuals can do with it, where they would go to select all those different options there for it, for that. So then the Shadow A1, this is where you can have the dashboard, as well as where you can go through and run reports. So the reporting wise, it's under this icon over here where it says reports. And then you have your different sort of reports there for it. I'm assuming most of the reporting that you would be running would be based off call center metrics, such as here's the call center or the queue, how many calls have come in, how many got handled by an agent, how many abandoned, what the average wait time, things along those lines there, as well as the agent reports, basically, you know, how many calls each agent's gotten, you know, and then sort of their statuses there, which would be then go under the shadow agent there for it. But going under the call center reports here, and then if we go under the queue summaries are our most generic one here. So then this gives us the ability to actually see basically what's happening in the actual queue. Anytime you go to run any report, it's going to ask you for a filter. So you get to the screen here. So this is where it's prompting you for an actual filter. So right now it says all calls. So if we were to run this, it's going to give us every single queue, as well as every single day that we've been collecting data for. You'll have a little drop down here. So, you know, if you have filters in the past, you basically will show them there, and then you can click on them, you know, rerun them, modify them. You can hit new here to add a new filter to this. So I can just give it a name. So I'm just going to call it example for right now. And then you have this little add box. So this gives us the ability to start adding different parameters to the actual filter. Excuse me. So that's where we can say, you know, what information we want to pull from the actual database to put in the actual report. So the very first thing here is the date and time. Everything from today all the way down to like last year, that's going to look at the current date, computer date, and then basically run it according to that. So if we said last month, it goes, okay, it's November 3rd, go grab everything for October. You know, you run it again in December, it's smart enough to figure out, okay, we're now in December, go grab everything for November for you. You do have the option where it says date range and date and time range to actually put in a specific start date and an end date. So that's where we can go and click on the actual date there, and then we can move the calendar around. You can switch the year around. You can switch the month around to actually pick and choose, you know, whatever date. So let's say, I don't even know when we started collecting data, but we'll say the 25th to, you know, to the 27th there for it. So we can select those 3 dates. And then we can hit save and close, and you can stack these on top of each other. So we can also go and say, you know, this month as well as those 3 dates, or we can go down to where it says time range. So if it's a queue and you know the queue only gets calls or should only really opens between 8:30 and 5, then you can put those times in there. And then even if calls come into the actual queue before or after that, it'll ignore those calls so they don't affect the queue, and that it's not going to show you, you know, because nobody's in the queue yet, it's not going to show you that the calls are getting abandoned or going to voicemail there for it. So you can actually put in a certain time range if you wanted to.
Hey, there's one thing I'd like to point out about the date.
Yep.
Is Monday's on the left.
Unfortunately, yes, it is. Yes. For the date range, yes. It's not Saturday. That's caught me out a couple of times too. Unfortunately, I can't get the developers to change that for it, but yes. The other option you do have is by going down to where it says like day of the week. So if you want to run like last month, but you don't want to see the weekends, then you can add this on top of it. And then you can just say, you know, check Monday through Friday, and then it will ignore obviously Saturday and Sunday there for it. Yeah, so that's where you can select, you know, date parameter there. The next option is call cost. For the most part, you can probably ignore that. I haven't applied a cost to, this would be for like long distance, you know, or international calls, so that, you know, you can try to match a phone bill. If you wanted that, we can add it and we can reprice all the old data. I would just need to know what rates you'd want to apply there for them. For it.
We won't be needing that, but
Okay.
thank you.
Yep. Call type here. This would be, let's say my boss wants all my outbound calls. Instead of giving them the report of all my calls there and then having them sift through all that, we can just go under call type here and just check, you know, just check the outgoing calls or check the incoming calls, you know, whatever parameter you do want there. If we don't check any, if we leave that off, then it's obviously going to grab all the inbound outbound calls that I do there for it. But yeah, it's where you can go in and specify, you know, you only want to see the internal calls or whatnot for it. Duration, this is where you can select, you know, like the longer calls, so you can find it, you know, if you need to find it, you know, who's the longest, who, you know, how many calls are waiting over 60 seconds or 5 minutes in the actual queue. Then you can, unfortunately, you do have to convert it to a second. But yeah, you can put that in there and then it'll bring up all the calls that are had a wait time of over that amount or under that amount there for it. Digits would be if you ever have to track down a call by the actual phone number. So if somebody ever calls in and they say they got bounced around person to person, or if you have to track down, you know, who actually spoke to this individual, then this is where you can go in. And so long as you know their phone number, then you can just say by wildcard here. And then you can type in the actual phone number there. So the phone system always gives us anything for North America, it's always a 1 for the long distance or the country code, and then the full 10 digits. So let's say it's our number, it's 1-905-576-4575. So long as you add that in there, then basically it's going to look for, you know, even if it's a local number, you still have to put the full 10 digits in there, and then it'll track down that number. If you're not sure of a digit or two, because maybe someone wrote it down and you can't make it their handwriting, so if you're not sure that's a 4 or a 9, or a 7 or a 1. You could put a couple of question marks in the spots that of the digits you're not 100% sure of. So basically, it's now going to match all the other numbers there. And anything that's there's a question mark, there has to be a digit there. It just won't care what that actual digit is for it. The other wildcard that if you hover your mouse over it just right, which I can't seem to do, or if we clear out the actual number, you can see the 2 wildcards that are there. So the question mark there is any sort of character. So it doesn't matter. So like if we wanted, let's say everything to the 905 area code, if we do 1905, and then instead of putting a bunch of question marks afterwards, just do a star there or the asterisk, then it doesn't matter what follows the 5. There can be 1,000 digits after it or nothing technically. As long as the first 4 digits of the number is 1905, it doesn't care what the rest of it actually is for it. So that's how you can actually track down, basically a call by their actual phone number. So if you're curious, did somebody actually call out to this person like they were supposed to or not, you can put their phone number in to try to track out, when did they call them and did they actually call them for it. So again, that's under the add option here and then the digits, and you select by wildcard. And you can add as many different phone numbers as you need to look up there for it. You just keep clicking the add row there for it and put in as many of the numbers as you need there for it. Excuse me. So that was the digits there. The extension is where you can then pick and choose the actual extensions that you want in the report. So in this instance here for the queue, we can go under extension and then say by extension and then select the individual extensions that or the individual queues that we want. So we would just hit search here. Basically you can type in, whatever. So it's any extension that's got a 5 there for it, or, under help, under the name there, we can look up help. And it should bring up all the help desk there. I'm not sure which one. I think the first one's the actual queue itself, but you can select whichever extensions you want, and you can select multiples. Obviously, there you can check as many of these boxes as we want. So if we're not sure, we can grab both of them, and then we'll grab both of those extensions and run a report on both of those there for it. The other thing you can do is instead of looking up by the extension number, you can look up by the last name field or the department. So if we said department. If we actually have the help desk in as one of the departments, that queue there, then we can add it, we can check whichever that department is, then basically we'll grab that queue for it, as long as there is a queue within that help desk group in that department. So you just look for that. Again, you can hit search here and just type in, whatever it is you're looking for, and then sensitive, or maybe there's not there's not a help desk group or department there. And then the other option would be a site. So the site would be another one of those fields in the actual RingCentral that we're pulling down. So you can say, where the actual extension is. The entity you don't have to worry about. That would be if we were getting data from a second phone system or multiple phone systems, then that allows us to pick and choose which phone system we want the report to solely reflect there for it. And then more options. These are a lot of the other things that you can filter on that generally don't get used all that often. The transfer from and the transfer to are the ones that I think customers generally have used in the past. So like the transfer to, that can be, I've seen customers where they have multiple ways calls can actually get into the actual queue. So from auto attendants, from individuals. So they would just say transfer to and then just put in the actual queue that they're curious about. And then this will give us all the ways or all the different extensions that transfer their calls to that particular queue there for it. Transfer from is sort of the reverse. That's where you can say transfer from an extension and then try to find all the different extensions that particular extension transferred their calls and where they end up, which extension they end up going to for it. So sometimes customers had it where somebody's complaining that, somebody keeps transferring all their calls and they're, for whatever reason, they're getting annoyed by it. So they can then find out, are they transferring all their calls? Who are they going and why? So they can then question that person as to why they're transferring all their calls for it. But yeah, that's sort of what you can do for those ones there. So that's sort of adding different things to the filter. You can always delete the filter. You can make a copy of it. So if you just want to change the date parameter around and leave all the extensions in there, you can do that, as well as you can rename this to be something else there for it. So we can call like help desk or something along those lines there. So that's building the actual filter itself. Once you have your filter set, you just can then just run the report. And then in this instance here, it's going to give us our queue report for the help desk for the dates in question there. Excuse me. So here we can see, you have the different queues, and then it'll tell you the total number of calls that came into it, how many went to an agent that day, how many were serviced by a non-agent, went to voicemail, and then basically the number of calls that hung up while they were waiting in the actual queue itself. Forwarded would be calls that go out to an outside phone number. So some customers we have, basically they have it set so they have a queue that is there for a night queue, and there's only really one person that's a part of that queue, and the calls just automatically forwarded to that person's cell phone number. So that's basically a call that gets forwarded out of the actual system there. Overflow would be calls that come into one queue and then get redirected over to another queue. So if they wait so long in the queue, or if there's the total number of calls that are waiting in the queue maybe too much, or if there's not enough available agents, then basically it's a call that rolls over from one queue to another for whatever reason that's there. And then other is sort of a catch-all of all the other options that are there. So if it's not in any of those, then it'll automatically just put it into another group. And for the most part, what I've seen for those ones are basically calls to get redirected back to the auto attendant. So usually while they're waiting in the actual queue, they hit like 0 to get redirected over, and then it'll take them back to the auto attendant there to get out of the queue. And then you have the wait times. So you have the average wait time and the longest wait time. And then you have the agent talk time. So that's how long the agent spent on the actual call itself. So with this report, so if you ever run a report to the screen, you can always send it to the printer by clicking on the little print icon in the upper left-hand corner there. Or you can export it. So the other icon, that's the other icon that's there. This then allows us to export it like to a PDF document, an Excel document, whatever kind of document you need. And it should then export and save into your downloads folder on your actual system that you're running the browser on there for it. So you should just be able to get a copy of it right into your downloads folder. So that's sort of the queue summary report. So that's a one-line version of it. You have like the queue daily summary. This is pretty much the exact same report, but what it'll do is then, if we ran it for last month, or if we ran the same report, and you can use the same filter. If I get rid of the date parameter out of here, we can then hit, just run the report, and then this is now going to give us a day-by-day breakdown for the actual queue itself. So we can see, each individual day, and then you can see how many calls have come in on each and every single day that's there. Excuse me for it. So that's the daily summary. The day of the week summary is pretty much the exact same, but what it'll do is it'll combine all the Mondays together and all the Tuesdays together, so you can try to track down, do you get more calls as the week goes on, or does it get less busy? So you can see it just gives you, here's the number of calls that come in on a Sunday, Monday, and so forth, therefore. So you can try to track how busy, as weeks go by, the weekdays as the week goes on, whether Mondays are busier than Tuesdays and so forth. You do have a weekly summary here as well, so you can run it over a couple of months, and then you can find out, the traffic on a week-by-week basis. And then you have a half hourly and an hourly summary. So this gives you, it'll combine all the day together, all the days together, and then give you like a hour-by-hour breakdown for it. So I'm just going to run this for yesterday, so you can then try to find out, peak times that you've had, or when does it sort of get a little bit lighter for like lunches and things like that. So you can, or the reverse, basically you can see the morning it's sort of is fine, and then all of a sudden at 11 o'clock it just gets a whole bunch of calls into that one particular queue there for it. So that's the hourly, and the half hourly will be the same there. The call results up here, these reports are pretty much the same as the other reports, but there's one significant difference in that this will break out the wait times between the serviced and the abandoned calls that's there. So as well as the voice calls that go to voicemail. So you'll see basically you have your queue and then you have your service. So for the service calls, the 85 for those days in question, basically the average wait time was roughly a minute, with the longest wait time being almost 10 minutes. And then the abandoned times, those 18 abandoned calls, basically the average wait time was 25 seconds, with obviously the longest wait time being 2.5 minutes there for it. So I'll break out the actual wait times for you. And just like the queue reports, you got like a daily summary, day of the week, and an hourly one there. And then we have the SLA reports here. So these will use what's called an SLA metric. So that this is where you can go in and apply sort of a minimum threshold for the service calls, as well as a maximum threshold or a minimum threshold for the abandoned calls, and then a max threshold for the wait times there for it. So you can then see basically how many calls came in. So you still get the total numbers that you would normally, but under the SLA, the abandoned calls would, if you had a minimum threshold for the abandoned calls that had a wait, then it will subtract those ones off the abandoned amount. Just like for the service calls, if you had a maximum amount of wait time, then it would subtract anything that's above that maximum out of those service calls there for it, for the SLA reports. And you can still get, just like the other reports, you get a daily summary and hourly one for it as well. The very first two reports here are queue detail reports. So the queue detail, this will give you the details of all the calls that came in the queue. So again, if I just use our example there, excuse me. So this will show us, the date and time of the call, the phone number that called in for, basically if we get a city from it, and then the talk time if they went to an actual agent or voicemail or got transferred over another queue, then it'll tell you the amount of time they spent at that next part, as well as the wait times. How long did they actually wait in the actual queue before they got dealt with there for it. You can also see the abandoned calls, basically how long they waited before they abandoned. And then obviously you can see which agent that they end up talking to for it, for all that. So that's the queue detail. The queue abandoned detail, pretty much the exact same report, but what it will show you is here's just it'll just filter automatically, just show you the abandoned calls. So you won't see any of the calls going to the voicemail agents or anything like that. So if you're just curious about, okay, when did all the people call in, or who were the ones that actually called in the queue? So you can see, all the different phone numbers of all the different people that actually called in to the actual queue itself. So those are the queue reports. The next group of reports here is the agent reports. So this is where you can then see what the agents are actually doing on the actual call. So like the agent summary here, this will allow you to see basically how many calls each agent took from the queue, how many calls came to them from outside the queue, any internal calls they may have been on. So it'll give you sort of all what they've been doing on the phone there for it. So you can see, the different people that are here, how many calls they got from the queue that day, any incoming calls that came to them not directly from the queue. A queue may have been involved at some point in time, but if it doesn't get directly transferred to them from the actual queue, then it will be considered as an incoming non-queue call. It also includes any sort of direct calls directly to that extension, or if I call in and get reception, then to transfer me the call over to that particular person there. Internal calls, so this would be that extension talking to an actual another extension there. So it's the two extensions being connected together therefore. So it's not necessarily a call that's transferred from another extension, it's the two extensions are actually talking together there for it. And then any outbound calls that they make, so basically that they called out to me there for it. And then obviously you have their total calls. So it'll give you sort of what's the agent's been doing throughout the time period you asked for. And just like the key reports, you have the detailed reports as well as the various summaries there for it as well. These two reports down here, these will tell you, so like this agent call summary by queue with offered calls. This here will give you, okay, here's the agent, how many calls or here's the queue, which agents got the actual calls from the queue, but it'll also tell you the number of times that queue rang that actual extension there for it. So if we find, so here's help desk. So we can see, okay, here's all the different people that basically, so we can see Tim basically Tim got 30 calls from the actual queue, but the queue actually rang his extension 33 times. You know, same with everybody else, you know, all the different people and then all the different times that queue actually rang that extension. Now, this is not the distinct number of different calls offered. It could be the same call rung that particular person multiple times as well. So you can see financial aid. I'm assuming this queue had one call that came into it, and probably these are all the people that it actually rings, and it's probably set up to ring everybody all at the exact same time. So it probably rang all those people. Conversely, it could be that it rang Carolyn and then rang Verity and then all the other people, and then it could, once it get to the bottom there, it could come back up and start ringing all those other people all over again, and then it would show up as a second offered call to them even if it's the same call for it. But yeah, this will show you the number of times that queue rang that particular extension, as well as the number of calls answered from that extension there. If you have agents in multiple queues, then this report here, the queue summary by agent with offered calls, will be the reverse of what you just saw there. So the other report you saw, okay, here's the queue and all the different agents that are there. This one will show you, okay, here's the agent and then all the different queues that person is a part of and how many calls they took from each of those individual queues. So again, if this would only be if you're in multiple different queues there for it. And then the middle reports, a lot of these are login reports. So these will let you know when they toggle the login, log out of the actual switch there for it. But you also have like the agent activity. So the agent activity will let you know all the information that the agent's been doing. So let's do, well, we can try this. So this should just give us, okay, here's all the individual extensions. Now this is going to, because we asked for just the help desk, so I'm just gonna, whoops, go back and copy that out. So I'm just gonna get rid of the queue. So for these individual agents, it will show us, okay, all the different times so this is gonna give you everything that they did. So roughly at midnight, it'll query the actual phone system to find out, you know, what are they? So right now it looks like they were logged into the actual queue at midnight for Tim here. And then it looks like at 8:49, Tim logged out of the actual queue. He logged into the shadow agent program, and then he logged in at 8:58, logged into the actual queue itself, and then logged out 30 seconds later and logged back in and so forth. And so you can see all the different things. Then he took a call from the help desk queue. If they ever go in do not disturb, we'll show that in here as well. And then also them going in and out of do not disturb. So you can see there, he went into do not disturb and then he went out of it 14 minutes later. So you can get all that information there for it. Excuse me.
A quick question.
Yep.
So a couple of well, Brandy has a question. Are we able to transfer calls from queue to another call queue to cover them? Is that something RingCentral needs to go?
That would be, unfortunately, that would be a RingCentral question.
Okay. And then my question is, so I have two data points that I record every day.
Okay.
And that's so I can see how long they were logged in for, and I can see how long they were on their average calls, the total talk time, and their average calls.
Yep.
But I have what used to be called ready and not ready. So basically, how long they were waiting for calls, and then how long they were basically do not disturb or something along those lines. Is there a report that shows me those two specifically?
Unfortunately, the do not disturb would be here. Now, what you would need to do now, like this is also going to count sort of if they go and log in into do not disturb at midnight and then or at the end of the day, and then when they go out of it at the beginning of the day is going to count that 8 hours there for it. There's no real available or ready. Because well, there is, but that's your phone going into the available state or out of available state therefore. But you get weird times like that because the phone's available and then all of a sudden once at midnight and then once it gets out of the available. So that's just it's not the available in the queue, it's just when your phone, so if we go back to Shadow A1 here, it's when your phone's in this available mode therefore up at the top. you may be able to try to use one of these agent activities summary reports to find out. It'll just summarize sort of what you just saw there. So it'll summarize like the number of times they went to do not disturb or logged into the phone or logged in out. Excuse me, and then give you sort of the time that they were in each of those states there for it as well. And then unfortunately you may have to do some math to try to, for the login, okay, they logged in for roughly 8 hours, then they were, you know, busy for 2.5 hours or almost 3 hours, and do not disturb for another hour and an hour there. So for that,
That's great.
yeah. So unfortunately, we don't have anything. This is probably the best, but you may have to do some sort of math and jiggling around with the numbers there for it. Yeah. So that's sort of the agent reports there. And then the last of the call center reports here is the cradle to grave. So what this is useful for is if you're ever have to try to see what's happening in the actual queue. You know, sometimes some customers find out that the queue's not quite doing what it's expecting or what they expected it to do, so they'll may make a test call in the queue and then run like this cradle to grave detail with the events to verify what's happened. So what this will show is everything that happens in that for that actual call. So I'm just going to run this for yesterday here. So it'll tell us, you know, when you first get in, if you go to the auto attendant, you know, which auto attendant, and then basically if you get transferred over to another device there for it. So it tells us all the different stuff that's happening there. And every single call, every single time there's a background color change, that signifies it's a different call. So we have this one here where the call comes in, it rings that particular extension, which then automatically goes over to the help desk extension there. And then you can see it then rang Jessie there. Basically, you can tell the time that it started ringing Jessie and how long it rang her. And then you can see after that, basically it rang Prax there, and then basically it rang them for 5 seconds. Then basically they were actually answered at that time, and then how long they actually dealt with the actual call itself there. So you can see all the actual individual extensions that rang at the various times there for it, as well as if they ever put themselves on hold. Um, yeah, so we can see down here that they were transferred on hold there for it. So it should show whether they were on hold. So you can see the call got put on hold, how long they were on hold for, and then basically where did it end up going. So it looks like they transferred the front desk transferred it into enrollment services there for it. So you can see all the different things that are going here, you know, into the queue, you know, all the different people it rang at that point in time. And then you can see, okay, then for whatever reason, it eventually went over to this extension, which then transferred it over to the auto attendant. So you can see all the different parts. And, you know, if so, here's the financial aid one there. It looks like it rang everybody all at the exact same time. And then, you know, they hung out, which probably again was maybe another testing or something like that. So you can see, again, this is where you can see everything that's sort of happening on the actual call itself for it. So, you know, if they put the call on hold, who it rings, if it's picked up back on hold, or if it goes to the voicemail system. So, again, for your testing, then you can use this to verify, you know, all the different people it's supposed to ring. And, you know, is it ringing everybody in a certain order like it's supposed to, or does it ring them all at the same time? But that's, yeah. So the cradle to grave with events would be, you know, if you ever have to track down a call, this is where you would do that to try to find out everything that was happened on the actual call itself. So those are sort of the call center reports, the various ones there. The shadow agent reports here, the auxiliary codes are where you'd go to find those, and the agent activity summary here. This then will give you sort of all the do not disturb and all the statuses that are there for it. So if we just use this filter here, so here you can see for Tim, basically Tim, you know, used these various statuses throughout the day for it. So it's not just do not disturb, but then you can see sort of those sub statuses that we had there. So again, for Jessie there, you know, again, that's where she selected the customer walk-in and, you know, at the end of the shift, lunch and so forth there throughout the day. And then if they do the message, so the message where that says message, that's this part up here where I switched mine from vacation to, you know, if I switched to out of office, that message is basically what this part means up here. Or that means there for it. So the auxiliary codes is where you can run those reports. If you do use the disposition codes, so that's where you can put the codes onto the actual phone after the fact, then that's the disposition codes over here for it. The account code and the forced account code would be putting on a code in order to, like a forced account code would be if you try to make a call, you have to put in like your PIN number there for it, for that one there. So we can do those. I haven't come across a customer that's using that just yet, but yeah, we do have the ability to do that for it. And then the other set of reports here where it says calls, this is where you can go in and basically this reports on everything, whether it's got a call center metric involved in it at all or not, whether it's a queue, an agent, or anything. It's just like the extension, the user reports, these run on all the different extensions and users. So just like the queue and the agents, you got like a detailed as well as various summary reports within that as well. The main ones in here that people generally use would be like the voicemail report. So if they're curious to know calls that got sent over to people's voicemails, then this is where you can run those ones there for it. And you can find it, like the voicemail detail by an extension. Then we'll show, for yesterday's calls, here's the extension and then basically the date and time of the call and basically the phone number and basically how long that person was in the actual voicemail system for. Unfortunately, we don't know with this particular phone system if they actually check the voicemail or not. We just don't get that metric, sadly, for it. But you can see all the various, different extensions and all the different numbers that call into them there for it. So that's sort of the reporting. Before we leave that, we go to the dashboard. Is there any questions on that? Any reports anyone was looking for that they didn't quite see or not sure how to get that information? Perfect. If something does come up in the future, feel free to let me know. We can figure that we can find that report for you as well. So the dashboard is where you can see stuff happening in real time. So if you have access to this icon up here, that'll look like a dashboard. Sorry, one thing before we leave the report. So the filters that get created, so like these filters that you see under the actual reports themselves that we've been using. So like this example, this HD2, these are all under the admin account. So any account that's not the admin won't have access to those filters. Each filter would be under their own separate user account. So they're not shared across user accounts or anything like that. The dashboard here, so this right now is the dashboard that this admin account has access to. So everyone else's may be slightly different. By clicking on it, you may get a tab up here that'll have your dashboard that's there. Otherwise, you can click on dashboard over here, and then you can say new dashboard. And then this will give us a blank screen to play with, so we can just call it again example here. So then that basically gives us a new dashboard tab here. If the system's locked, so like with this widgets here, you'll notice that there's nothing that allows me to actually add a widget to. So we just have to click on the widgets in the upper right-hand corner to unlock it. And then we have access to the widgets, and these would be all the widgets that user account has access to. So call history, you have like current, hourly, and today widgets here. So these would just be where we can have widgets based off of the departments. So like we can have the department grid here, and then this will just show like, okay, here's all the different departments, how many inbound, outbound calls that they've had, the total time for all that stuff there. Anything that's a grid, if you click on the gear, in the upper right hand corner, you can now go where it says fields here. We can now uncheck, whatever fields we don't want. So if we don't care for the max outgoing durations or max durations, we can get rid of that. As well as we can add a filter to this widget here to sort of filter it down. So from what we're seeing, so if we only wanted a particular queue or two, we can go under here, say department, and then add in the actual department itself. So, whatever department is, you just type that in there and then it would filter that down. So if we set accounting, and then we hit update, and now it should only show the accounting department therefore. And you can have obviously as many different filters that you need for it. Yeah, so Anything that's a graph, so if we click on this department inbound calls by graph, obviously we'll give you a graph there for it. And by clicking on the gear, this then allows you to switch the presentation from, in this instance, a pie, so we can change it over to a column, and we can obviously add a filter to it as well. So then we can have the different departments and show, obviously their inbound calls there for it. And you can do the same thing for like the extensions if you wanted to, or you can just have total inbound calls, outbound calls, anything that's a counter. When you click on that, if you make the widget bigger, it makes the number inside it actually bigger. So these would be good for like a wallboard, so you can have it displayed off and make it easier for people to read from a distance there for it. Anything that's a today or like an hourly widget, these will reset at midnight. Anything at the current hour will obviously reset at the top of the hour there for it. So we'll reset the values back down to 0 at the top of the hour. Media would be if you wanted to have like an HTML or a Twitter feed, you can have those there for it. Queue history will give you historical values for the queue. So again, you have the current hour, hourly, today. Like if we click on hourly here, we have like a help desk one here. So this will give us, okay, here's the help desk. And then it should show, basically, I don't know why this one's not showing anything for it, but it should show basically all the hour by hour breakdown for that actual queue itself. So it'll look something like this, but it would be broken out. In this instance here, this is combining all the queues together, so you just have to go and filter it down just for the queue that you're looking for. So that's like an hourly, and today widgets here would show you, the total number of calls that came in today across all the queues, and again, we can filter it down specifically for an actual queue. The percent abandoned will show you the percentage of the calls that abandoned so far today. It gives you like a little speedometer there for it, obviously. And then, so that's the queue history there. And then real-time calls, you got basically what's the extensions are doing. So if we click on extensions here, we can click on the help desk here, and then basically this should show all the people that are a member of the actual help desk group there. And you can see sort of, are they on a call, are they not on a call? How do I get rid of that? Let me close it, the dashboard, and get rid of that. So it'll show you sort of what their current status is. Are they in a meeting, or in the do not disturb? Are they on a phone call, or are they available? It'll tell you sort of, the 0 lets you know how many queues they're currently logged into. And then the 1 that's over top of is basically the number of queues that they're a member of, therefore it. So it'll tell you, if they're busy, how long they've been in that state. And then the idle part down there is the last time since basically their phone set's done something. So whether it rang or if they got off a call, basically, so you can see here for Megan there, so she's built and logged into the queue for over 3 hours there, but she's only been idle for 24 seconds because she just got off of the actual call itself there for it. You can see whether they're SA login, that's if they've logged into the shadow agent there for it. And then busy just as whether so if their phone's in a busy mode, so whether they're connected on a call or in do not disturb or actually busy, then it will show busy there for you as well for that. This particular widget has 2 views. So you have this view here. If we click on the gear, then over where it says presentation, this is where we can switch the view from a summary to a grid. So it'll be similar to what you saw in the other view, but not take up as much space there for it. But it gives you also the number of incoming calls as well as outbound calls they've had so far today, therefore, as well as their average talk time for it. And again, by clicking on the gear, you can remove some of the headers if you wanted to as well. So in the other view, again, is summary there. And you can enable a summary. A summary will just let you know, basically at the bottom down there, the number of people that are logged in, connected, and do not disturb there for it as well. The other widgets that's under real-time calls here would be an extension detail grid. So this will then give you a list of here's all the extensions. And if we scroll through this, it will show us, eventually who's on calls, who's not on a call, which looks like the vast majority of people are not. If you want to get rid of all the people that aren't on a call, there is a filter in here where if we click on the little plus and then we switch this to call state, You have an option to say connected, ringing, and dialing. So it'll only show those then the people that are currently on a call or making a call there for it. So you can see all the various people that are currently on an actual call itself for it. And then, so that's the real-time calls for the extensions. The queue, like the help desk queue status widget here. Let's turn on this one here because this one has a little bit more information in it. So this will tell us, okay, here's the various queues here. The top is sort of in real time, sort of what's happening. So you can see the total number of calls that are currently waiting in the actual queue, as well as the longest wait time. And then you can see the agents there. So you can see the number of agents that are currently logged in, which is the 5, and then the 8 is the total number of members of that actual queue there. And you can see sort of the various status, just like you could under the device status there that we saw earlier. And then the bottom half is sort of the historical information, so we can see, the total number of calls that came in, how many were answered, how many were abandoned, and obviously how many went to voicemail there for it as well. And then you can also have, other widgets in here, like calls waiting counter, so you can see just as a single widget, just the number of calls currently waiting or the longest waiting time. Agent login status, so who's logged in, who's logged out. So if you just want to see that, you can see that for it. So, and you can move these around, obviously make them bigger or smaller to fit your display there for it. For that there. So again, the widgets, these are all the widgets that this user account has access to for it. You can create as many tabs as you need to along the top. So some customers have it where each individual queue is on their own separate things. Some have it where they have 2 widgets or 2 dashboards. One is here's the historical for each of the queues, and then another widget for here's like all the real time or the agents and what they're doing. So they just separate them out, whatever will work best for you there for it. Where it says dashboards, so I clicked on new dashboard to bring up a dashboard there. You can always change the name of it by clicking on the little gear there to rename it. Anything that's a yellow star, when you first log into the actual dashboard, basically anything that's a yellow star will automatically pop up, as well as whatever's the last tab that you were on. So right now, if I were to close this, the example will still pop up when we log back in, but so will help desk and dashboard 1. The HD tab will not. So again, if I close this out and go back into it, you notice the HD tab will not be there because it's not one of the 2 that has a yellow star, nor was it the last tab that I had was left in on there for it. The other one here, so this one that looks like a piece of paper, it's a template. So what this allows you to do is, if we wanted to share this sort of dashboard or the snapshot of this dashboard out to somebody else or to everybody, we can just click on template there. And then what that'll do, I'll have to close this out and go back into it, is basically it'll allow us to go under, say, new dashboard here. And then where it says template, we can then select the actual, so our example one there. And then basically I can just give it a name, so example 2. And then when I hit create, it's going to basically create a duplicate of that actual dashboard there for us. Now, anybody can do that. So right now, if I log in as a different account, they'll still have access to this particular example one there. So long as they have access to these these 3 widgets there, then will pop up and show whatever widgets that they have access to. So if they don't have access to the widgets, it won't allow them to actually see those widgets, even if they don't have access to it. So that is in place. So they can't see something that they're not supposed to for it. And if we've added a trigger to a widget, let's say the number of calls waiting, this one down there, then what this should do is basically, once it gets over that trigger, it'll turn this one red, and then basically, just to make it stand out and be a little bit more noticeable to the actual user that's looking at the actual dashboard. Also within here is, if you have the ability to, we can click on here under device control, and actually go in and change this actual user's status there for any user account that has access to that for that. But that is sort of creating dashboards and creating different tabs therefore, and adding widgets to the actual system itself. Any questions on that? Any questions on the software in general? Because we're pretty much at the end of the software.
Michael, do you want to send that recording to me?
Sure.
Or were you just going to send it to Shannon?
No, I can send it to you, Robin. It may not.
Okay.
It'll probably take a bit to convert, so it'll probably I'll probably be sending it to you tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Okay. Brandy, I believe, has a question as to basically do all members have access to the dashboard, or will just certain folks? That I can't answer. That maybe in theory everybody could have access to it, but it all depends on how the company decides to implement it.
Brandy, if you want to let me know who you want access to it, I'll.
Okay, we're just wanting our people on our team to see who else is on with them and if they're on calls and different things like that, like they do now in the Finesse system.
Mm-hmm. And that's called the dashboard, right, Michael?
Yeah. So technically, if that's what they want, you can also do that within Shadow Agent here, because you can also see basically the individuals who's on a call, who's not a call within that as well for it.
Yeah, whichever one's going to be easiest for them, like so they're not having to navigate to a bunch of different screens. Like right now, they can just log into Finesse, and that's the screen that's up, and they can see as people come in and out. If they're whichever one is going to make them not have to go somewhere else to see that information is ideal.
Now, I'm assuming the individuals will be coming into here to change their do not disturb statuses most of the time.
Yeah.
Then probably will be easier for them to just go into here and click on this button there. Now, when people first log in, it will look something similar to this, where it'll have everybody here.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to go in and select, the individuals, either the department or the queues that that you want to see, and then you never have to reselect it again, because if you log back in, it'll remember all the people that you did have selected there for it.
Okay, and regular users. So like for me, this makes sense. But if I have one of my call agents who all we really have them do is log on, take calls, they can see who's in the same queue with them, and then and they change their status if they're going on lunch or on break, and then they log off. They would only need access to like the 9, maybe 10 folks that are in the same queue as they are.
Yeah, so truthfully, then, yeah, again, unfortunately, it will show everybody out at the very beginning. So it's then just a matter of probably selecting the very first time you go into it. It's basically select none of the queues, click on the queues, and then, I'll take my support queue, select the queue there.
Okay.
No, that's not the support. What's the tech queue?
Okay, so they can select queues. They don't have to select specific people.
Correct. So you can do this, get them to select the actual queue that they're a member of. And then this icon right here, if you click on this then brings up all the people that are part of that actual queue.
Okay, perfect. I'm sure we'll have some of our folks that are a little bit not as advanced with technology that we'll have to explain that to multiple times, but we'll get there. And then there was another question from someone else. Natalie asked if will this system with the different, like, will it sync with Outlook when we have meetings, or do we have to manually go in and put that we're in meetings?
Unfortunately, yeah, it does not. It'll put your phone, like right now, yeah, you would have to manually go into it. It will not sync with Outlook, unfortunately. Any other questions from anyone?
So back to your original question, Brandy, are you okay with the people that you need? Are they okay just to use the shadow agent?
We'll figure it out. I mean, anything's going to be a training opportunity, so I think this will probably seems to be the easiest for some of our folks. So we'll try it this way, and if we think the other way might be better, we can have that conversation later.
Okay.
But this looks like it'll be the easiest.
And Michael, so
Yep.
there's a difference between dashboard access and shadow agent, right?
Shadow Agent is this program here, which basically gives them a little bit of a dashboard there, so they can still see, you know, if calls ringing and whatnot for them. But it also gives them the ability to change their statuses. The dashboard within the Shadow A1, this gives you can have a much more robust one there, so you can see all the different. You can more or less see the same stuff, but you can have it in different widgets. Plus, you can have triggers within the actual dashboard itself.
I
Excuse me.
have a clarifying question really quick. So for my folks that are on our team and in our queue, they're going to have to log into RingCentral and then log into the shadow agent and then toggle into the queue that they're supposed to be into.
Truthfully,
I'm just trying to determine how many steps to get them where they need to be.
I'm sure they'll have to be in RingCentral first because that is their phone system. Yeah.
Okay. And maybe we can walk through that once we, you know, have the help desk more firmly in and what it'll take, like from login to accepting a call, like very basic stuff for some of our folks on these different call queues. Because this was a lot for some of our folks, but if we can do, you know, step 1, log into RingCentral, step 2, log into this, step 3, do this, so we can have kind of a checklist for some folks who are a little bit who technology is a challenge for, the easier we can make this for them, the better.
And Michael, so the dashboard, which is Shadow A1, that is more the administrative side?
yeah, because there's also so you can only have 20 people logged into the Shadow A1. So that would be this program that you currently can see. For the Shadow Agent, you can have up to 100 different people logged into the Shadow Agent here for it.
20 max for the administrative side on the Shadow A1, right?
Yeah, which is the dashboard plus the historical reporting. Yes.
And what was the number on the Shadow Agent?
100.
Okay. And can these numbers be increased if we need that? Okay.
Yes, definitely. Yep. Yeah, that's currently what I see right now for how it's set, but
And is there a cost for the increase?
there would be. Offhand, I don't know what it would be.
Okay. We'll work with what we have, and then we'll get with Shannon if we need an increase.
Yep. Yeah, and then Robin, like I said, I'll send you. It'll probably be tomorrow when you get the recording. So I'll send that to you. Once I get the recording, because it does take a lot to process it, but I'll send that to you. If we need to go over things at any point in time, obviously you can send me an email or give me a call if you have some questions, or if we want to schedule up additional training, we can do that as well. If there's a specific things you guys want to discuss about anything, because it is a lot of information, obviously, to take in all at one time. And right now things may be clear, but come tomorrow or a week from now, it may bring up other questions that you may have as well. And we can always go over all that at a later date as well. That's not an issue.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything from anyone else? All right, then. I guess I will let everyone go and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Michael.
Oh, you're welcome.
Bye.
Bye now.